Hopefully you all can hear me okay. I hope you all are having a wonderful Wednesday night. I believe the audio is better. Let's hope it is better. Excelsior. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. God damn, the fucking game, man. Shit sucks. Thought that was for sure gonna fix it. Okay, that should be a little better. That should be better. That's it. That's it, you know, that's it. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. 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 Okay. That's it, guys. That's it. So, on tonight's live stream, unlike last week, we have terribly bad news. Terribly bad news. So, I guess we'll just dive right in. This is a fun one, huh? Gotta love this. A truck carrying 40,000 pounds of toxic soil from East Palestine train derailment overturns on highway. The driver sustained minor injuries in the incident. Around 20,000 pounds of contaminant spilled in the roadway. Blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it sucks that we have to have these ecological disasters in the first place, but now we can't even clean them up properly. So what the hell is going on around here, guys? It's just crazy to me. Just crazy. The Ohio EPA determined that the spill has been contained and was not considered a threat to nearby waterways. The emergency management agency said. Local fire rescue team, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, the crash, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I wouldn't trust it. Big time lawsuits coming in. Remember, guys, call these beep out by name. Norfolk Sutherland needs to go down for this. Oh, even the feds are suing too, huh? Good. Sue. Sue. You got a problem? Sue. You don't like it? Sue. So, scary stuff here, guys. I mainly wanted to start this one out with because get involved, sign the petitions, and contact Ohio government officials and demand that they hold Norfolk Southern accountable for this. Because just keeps on getting better, guys. Keeps on getting better. So yeah, this next one, a toxic smoke is spewing from an inferno at a recycling plant known as a fire hazard. Officials say flames could burn for days. So yeah, I mean, from what I've read, the recycling plant is a vague term. This is just a plastics plant. So we'll watch this little clip.
It sure did.
This massive fire at a large recycling plant putting out toxic smoke could burn for days. Officials say 14 acres of plastics stored on the property. But with this site especially, it wasn't a matter of if, but when, with city officials aware the operations were a fire hazard.
The issue was a unsafe building and unsafe grounds.
And putting the blame squarely on an owner of the recycling plant.
That business owner is fully responsible for all of this. We have the unsafe building order and the recorded court documents, and everything that's ensued here, the fire, the damages, the risk that our first responders have taken and the risk these citizens are under are the responsibility of that negligent business owner.
An evacuation order is in place for a half-mile radius. Around 2,000 residents ordered to evacuate, including one who lives at the heart of it.
I can see from the debris that some of it was on fire, and it hit the trees, the tree line, and the trees immediately ignited.
When she got the evacuation order, she didn't hesitate to leave her home.
And when they said evacuate, I didn't have shoes on, I had socks on, and I left my purse, my shoes, I left a lot of things, personal things, at the house, and just got in the car and drove away.
For health officials, their key concern now is hazards from the smoke.
These are very fine particles, and if they're breathed in, can cause all kinds of respiratory problems. Burning of the eyes, tightening of the chest. It could aggravate asthma. It could cause bronchitis and all kinds of things.
The EPA monitoring particulate matter, looking for toxic chemicals. Residents are being told to stay indoors, but the uncertainty is causing concerns and frustrations.
It's hard to say what's going into the city air right now.
We would like to know that it is safe to be able to breathe the air and to drink the water.
It is.
So we want to hear from the officials.
I mean, it's not it's not safe, guys. Just take one look at that and you can tell it's not safe. So, heart goes out to everybody in Indiana who's in that radius there. Super sad. Protect your families. Get out of there. And, again, hold these people accountable that are destroying the planet. So as we move on here, this one's a little bit more interesting. We're gonna drift away a little bit from the ecological disasters. I don't want to spend too much time on all the negative. We could go down that rabbit hole forever and ever. But this was an interesting article that I found. It has to do with education. So I think one of the most key important things we can do in the future to build a community and citizens that have planet first in mind is start early and often with education. So that being said, this is a famous Jesuit quote. Give me a child until he is 7 years old. By St. Ignatius of Loyola. So we're just going to go ahead and read this. Thought it was super interesting. So Sue Palmer of upstate Scotland, a campaign for a Nordic-style kindergarten age in Scotland, makes the case for the power play in childhood development. So again, I think kids need to be getting out into nature more anyway during school. If you ask me, I think that school should maybe run all the way into May, the end of May, all the way, even all the way to June, halfway through June, because that is prime time to get out into the field and teach kids about agriculture, ecology, everything. So, that being said, apparently the Nordic peoples have a quite interesting way of teaching the youths. Quote, give me a child till he is 7 years old, said St. Ignatius of Loyola, and I will show you the man. The founder of the Jesuit Brotherhood was way ahead of his time. For most of human history, serious-minded adults paid scant attention to the under sevens. After all, small children have no obvious economic worth. They're also difficult to control and apparently impervious to reason. But neuroscience has proved Loyola right. Children's experiences in those first 7 years, when formation of the neural networks is governed largely by emotion, will affect their behavior throughout life. As an international organization determined to mold human souls for its own purposes, the Jesuit Brotherhood was spot on in targeting the very young. The corporate hijack of childhood. The combination of ancient wisdom and neuroscientific evidence is a powerful one that hasn't been lost in the marketing departments of powerful international organizations today. And again, guys, these corporations, they all just want to turn the kids into mindless Uber consumers. And that should be the main goal of everybody, whether you're a parent or whether you're an individual, whatever it may be, is to reduce consumption. Reduce consumption, reduce waste, and reuse and recycle as much as possible. So these corporations, in pursuit of profit, know who they spend the most advertising dollars on the most influential, which is the young kids. Advertising at its best is about making people feel that without their product, you're a loser. Kids are very sensitive to that. You open up an emotional vulnerability, and it's very easy to do with kids because they're the most emotionally vulnerable. With billion-dollar budgets and constant access to infant minds through the mass media, corporate marketers are far better placed to groom the under 7s than scattering of medieval priests. So for many years, they've been intervening their way into tiny children's lives by hijacking traditional infant activity of play. This used to be something kids didn't, under their own steam, go play, said by adults that happily disappeared to run, jump, build dens, invent games, play Let's Pretend, making use of anything that came to hand. From the age of 2 or 3, children played out around their homes, the older kids keeping an eye on the younger ones, the women in the neighborhood keeping an general eye on all of them. Play was active, creative, self-directed, and in every sense of the word, free. But nowadays, thanks to the power of advertising, children have been taught to play, that play isn't free. It requires specialized equipment designed by adults, huge quantities of it, involving a considerable amount of shopping. Since many parents have been brainwashed into thinking that spending money is the best way to demonstrate love for their offspring, the market has finally found a way to make the under 7s generate cash. Cash. It's not just the pursuit of immediate profits that motivates global corporations, it's the prospect of profits to come. Giving a marketer access to children until they're 7 years old and they'll show the future generations of super consumers the power of play. However, it's becoming clear that the corporate hijacking of children's play has unintended consequences that are anything but good for the global economy. When children are distracted from old-fashioned play during their favorite formative years, there's a price to pay as time goes on. Real play, as opposed to toy consumption or screen-based entertainment, is essential for physical and emotional health, especially when it appears outdoors. All that running, jumping, climbing, building, and so on is great for physical health and development, and when it happens in natural surroundings, it's extremely good for mental health too. Real play requires also considerable personal input and initiative, so it helps children develop a range of positive traits such as a can-do attitude, perseverance, creativity, emotional resilience. Develop social skills. Through playing together, youngsters learn how to get along with their peers, to collaborate over shared projects, to negotiate their way through squabbles. Since it's driven by infant fierce desire to understand the world and how it works, old-fashioned real play provides the cognitive foundations on which formal education can be later based. Play, in fact, is evolution's way of helping human children develop minds of their own, curious, problem-solving, adaptable human minds. Take away these formative experiences, and you'll get physical and mental health problems. Make these kids dependent on shop-bought toys and sedentary entertainment for their kicks, and you'll affect the social and emotional and cognitive development of the next generation. So, tomorrow's adults may well have the bodies and brains of super consumers, but they will be capable of generating wealth required to feed their shopping habits? Who knows? Freedom to play has been the birthright of human children since the species began. It's only in recent decades in traffic-clogged towns and cities that opportunities for kids to get outdoors and active began to drain away. And since this coincided with the growth of consumerism and screen-based entertainment, it's proved amazingly easy to keep the younger generation off the streets. Concerned adults now insist that their offspring spend most of their leisure time indoors, perhaps screen gazing, perhaps attending supervised clubs and classes, but always under close supervision and direction by adults. Perceptive parents know deep down that something about this isn't right. It hasn't been translated into anxiety rather than remediation. Moms and dads are increasingly anxious and protective about their offspring, worrying about their health and safety, their education, their future, all of which is fed right into the hands of the marketing men. Yeah, squirtillions of dollars, and this is literally what they spend. If you go on denying children the access to real play, global corporations will generate squirtillions more. The physical and mental health problems affecting a growing number of children and young people will lead to impossible demands on our health services. Time and space to play. So, Scotland, as a matter of urgency, must find a way to reinstate active, creative, self-directed play at the heart of childhood. And we must do it during the first 7 years, when children are their most emotionally vulnerable, but also at an age when they can establish health default habits of behavior rather than healthy ones. At present, most kids have a chance to play outdoors at nursery school, but our extremely early school starting age means that at 4 or 5 years old, they transfer to school and are expected to crack on with reading, writing, and sums, math. We aren't giving enough time for play to work its developmental magic. Other European countries, especially Nordic nations, are making much better progress in this respect than we are. Their play is based. Kindergarten extends until children are 6 or 7 and are staffed by well-qualified early year practitioners who understand the intricacies of child development. They know when to intervene and helpful support, when to back off and let kids learn from their own explorations. At the same time, they don't hold back. They don't hold children back. Any child who shows an interest in reading, writing, and numbers is encouraged and supported. But treating their challenges as individuals and not pushing anyone to learn before they're ready, they ensure a much more level educational playing field when formal schooling eventually begins. In most recent OECD survey of educational achievement, the 3 Western nations who scored the highest were Finland, Estonia, and Switzerland, all of which have a kindergarten stage up to the age of 7. I mean, this right here, guys. Boom. Kindergarten stage up to the age of 7. I think this is crucially important. I think the whole entire world should develop educational practices like this, and that, which include getting out into nature and getting hands-on experience, you know, getting them to play outside, and also incorporating a little bit of learning into that that is outside of STEM. So, countries with a later school starting age have a better record in terms of childhood well-being, and there's a growing pile of psychological evidence and research to explain why. Most public debate about early education and childcare in Scotland relates to its role in freeing parents to return to the workplace, but we should also be discussing its importance in the long-term development of physical and mental health. There are powerful arguments for changing the ethos of education and care for under 7s and giving more attention to their physical, emotional, and social cognitive development. A campaign to introduce Nordic-style kindergarten stage will be making these arguments in the coming months. Give Scotland's children time and space to play until they're 7 years old, and we'll have a brighter, more well-balanced future. Sue Palmer, former primary head teacher, literacy specialist, and author of books of children development in the modern world. Upstart.Scott. So yeah, super interesting article, guys. I thought it was really relevant. It's been something that I wanted to talk about for a while now. I mean, obviously, St. Ignatius of Loyola, these religious institutions certainly understood that you need the key is to get at the kids early. If we want to create the next generation of planet and ecology minded kids, then we need to grab them before they're 7. Get them motivated before they're 7. Get them excited about you know, detrashing and cleaning up the environment, conservation, new ideas to reduce waste, new ideas for, you know, green energy. You know, teach the kids, get them in hands-on activities early and often, so that way they're compelled later on in life when they get into the serious schooling to take those ideas, later learn the STEM, the engineering and the mathematics and the engineering, that by the time they reach adulthood, they're going to be way more set up to enact changes and healthy progressive ideas into the memosphere. So super interesting article. Just thought we can go over that real quick. And you know, if you're a parent out there, I certainly, when I become a parent, plan on, you know, being the teacher myself and getting my kids out there in the environment, teaching them how to grow early, getting them out there cleaning up parks, cleaning up lakes, anything that I can to get them excited about restoring the planet and keeping their environment safe and clean, and I think that, and allowing them to play while they do it, you know. I'm not anti-technology by any means. I think it's a wonderful, useful tool. The internet is just this beautiful nervous system of the whole world that has interconnected us all and allows us to exchange information, which is the real currency of the world. So I'm not anti any of that, but again, I am advocating for, you know, that we get out there and instead of just handing your kid an iPad at 3 years old, get motivated to get out there in the field, in nature. Get them excited. Get the kids excited about the planet. So, yeah. Cool, guys. Next step, next topic I want to talk about here, going from the exact opposite of the spectrum. This is an interesting article that I read recently from Forbes. The U.S. has spent $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs. A failure, says the authors of new cannabis book. So, we'll just read a little bit here. As the United States faces a long overdue reckoning on racial justice, leading cannabis voices Kawasi Owasu Bemfe and Taharia Rimatutala are releasing Waiting to Inhale, Cannabis Legalization and the Fight for Racial Justice, a compelling examination of the intersection of racial justice and cannabis policy. The authors confront the undeniable racial disparities in the cannabis policy and enforcement, offering a powerful critique of the war on drugs, social and economic and racial implications of the budding cannabis industry. So, yeah, the book delves into stories of those who've experienced the harsh consequences of the war on drugs, highlighting the work of activists, entrepreneurs, policymakers striving for change. As the tide continues to turn in favor of legalization, the authors emphasize the urgent need for expunging cannabis convictions and opening doors for Black and other underrepresented communities in the rapidly growing legalist cannabis market. Yeah, guys, so this kind of relates back to the childhood thing. The whole way they sold this in the 80s, this war on drugs in the 70s, kind of starting with Nixon, was that we got to keep kids away from drugs. When the reality is not one of the most dangerous drugs, which causes the most deaths and the most disease, is the legal one, alcohol. And it's so ingrained into our culture that people don't even consider it a drug. When in reality, drugs like cannabis, psychedelics, mushrooms, these kind of things are some of the healthiest, safest drugs on the planet. And the war, the $1 trillion that we've spent fighting it, has a lot less to do with keeping a population of healthy citizens and a lot more to do with control and managing and basically creating a market for pharmaceutical drugs. So there's two big industries are the reason why these industries these drugs are not legal, and the industries are still kneecapped. It's the pharmaceutical companies, and then obviously law enforcement. These law enforcement agencies get big budgets to fight the war on drugs. They provide a lot of jobs, and the industrial prison complex makes a lot of money off cheap labor, keeping people in prison for minor offenses, minor cannabis offenses, or that kind of thing. I mean, this goes into I'm a big fan of the Last Prisoner Project. I'll put a link in the description of the video. You guys go check that out and donate. Just a wonderful organization that helps people who've been negatively impacted by the war on drugs and been incarcerated and fined into oblivion. Helps them with their legal fees and stuff like that. And obviously, most of the people affected negatively by the war on drugs are minorities. Specifically Black people. That being said, think of where this $1 trillion could have gone. Into education, into infrastructure, into green energy, into just dozens of other things. The war on drugs has failed. It was never designed to be won. It exists completely to control people, sadly. And it's really a shame that is the case. And I get it. I don't think that kids using drugs is a good idea either. When I was a kid growing up in the DARE program, one of the big things, the war on drugs, that they pushed to us, that cannabis was a gateway drug, which is just a complete lie. In my experience, obviously the legal drug alcohol is the gateway drug, which is the legal one. And it's not only the legal one, it's mass projected via advertising to everybody as not only the socially cool thing to do, but a healthy drug. When in reality, I mean, alcohol by far and away causes more death, disease, and anguish and suffering and depression and mental illness than all of the other drugs combined. So, and again, I'm not anti-alcohol either. I'm not anti any drugs. That's my main point here, is that Terrence McKenna, he had a great he's got a great saying that all drugs need to be legalized, first of all, but specifically we need to create something called, the Vegetable Drug Act, or the Plant and Vegetable Drug Act, which basically it's very simple. The federal government just needs to implement it. Anything that you can grow, any plant or vegetable, is legal. It's not that hard. That's not that hard to understand. Very simple. If you can grow it, it's legal. Okay? So that being said, the federal government, here we are. I think we're at about 36 states now that have legalized cannabis medically, and maybe about 20 or so that are recreational, which the numbers are growing. But there's no reason why the federal government can't just step in and legal and reschedule this drug, because cannabis is by far one of the safest drugs on the planet. So, and even more importantly than that, these people that are still in jail for this, or have been negatively impacted, or haven't been able to get jobs because of a felony or a misdemeanor charge from a little bit of weed, all those criminal records needs to be expunged. I mean, just the thought of how many torn families have, it breaks my heart. It really, really does. Yeah, I mean, right here, guys. Yeah, education, healthcare, community centers. I mean, it's maddening to me that we have not figured this out yet. So, if you guys can get out there and fight for legalization. I'm a big advocate for it. I also think it will also help. Cannabis is a feminizing drug, a lot like psychedelics, I believe, and it creates a more empathetic person. So if we normalize the use of these, and just very simply in the same way that alcohol is legal for anybody who wants it over 21, you can do the same thing with all other drugs. I think if we normalize the use of these clearly safer drugs, in turn, over time, the next couple of generations are going to be a lot more in tune with nature and a lot more respectful of it, and consume less. That's one thing I've noticed about alcohol. I did my fair share of boozing all throughout my 20s, which I significantly regret. Along with my fair share of not giving a shit about the planet at all. So that's another reason why I've started this channel, is because I really want to make up some ground. I wasted all of my 20s instead of getting active, getting politically active, getting out there, donating my time, getting involved with charities and volunteering. I wasted a lot of my time and a lot of my money trying to fit in with the cultural norm, which is drinking. And they advertise it as the coolest thing in the world. I mean, all you have to do is turn on your TV for about 2 seconds, and every other ad is either a alcohol ad, a big pharma drug ad, or a car ad. All three of which I think negatively impact our environment and our not only our environment, but our own well-being and our own health significantly. So just be aware of this stuff, guys. I mean, alcohol just makes you overconsume. It's just a horrible drug. And again, I'm not anti-alcohol by any means. I just think it needs to be used respectfully and in moderation, like any other drug. But of all the drugs, that seems to be the one that is, the most difficult to use in moderation, other than, let's say, heroin or some of those more very, very serious ones. So that's my little spiel about that. I mean, just that number to me is mind-boggling. $1 trillion. Just the amount of good that $1 trillion could have gone to. And yeah, instead of fighting, even the language here, the war on drugs. Why our culture is so obsessed with war? It's insane. It's just insane. Not only was it a failure, but it's an ongoing, never-ending war. We need to change the language. We need to legalize all drugs and get right. So, moving on. Speaking of Terrence, like I said, one of my favorite things that he ever said was, and he was a big advocate, was the Plant and Vegetable Act. I think it's such a simple thing. If you can grow it in your backyard, it shouldn't be illegal. It's just that simple. So we'll end tonight's stream with another little Terrence McKenna lecture. I won't keep you guys for too long. I just think this is relevant to the conversation about saving the planet and the drug conversation. So we have arrived at the end of the road in terms of a powerful tool for inducting us into what Wittgenstein called the realms of the unspeakable. We need no more powerful tools than what we have inherited from these shamanic cultures. It's a question, pure and simple, of courage and having the guts to use it, of surrender. And of course, it has to be that, because surrender requires the abandonment of the ego. Yeah, I mean, and this is the reason why drugs are still illegal in this country, is because we're an ego, male-dominated, insane culture of insanity, a warlike culture. And what psychedelics do is they dissolve boundaries and I wouldn't say abandonment of the ego, but they reduce your egoic tendency. So, and it is the ego's house of cards that is entirely at risk, and if we begin to look more deeply at the psychedelic experience. So it's a challenge for the society. It's a challenge for the individual. And it is, you are not ingenuine if you have arrived at this place in the spiritual quest. Now the tools for the information are put into our hands, and it's up to us to decide what we're going to do with it and how we're going to apply it. The evidence that this is our birthright and this is what we came from and yearn to return to is all around us. But it has been suppressed by the male-dominated, phonetic alphabet, yak, yak, yak kind of culture, which we are all unquestionably embedded in. But I can't stress enough the consequences of not taking this seriously. I believe it's the death of the planet. I mean, I totally agree. I don't think that through the exhortation and the preaching and the legislation and manipulation through propaganda that we're going to get people to do what must be done in order to get this ship right. They're going to have to be touched by the tremendum. And I scoured India. I sat with the Roshis and the Rishis and the Geishis and the Gurus and went through the whole 9 yards. And as far as I'm concerned, it's all a skin game. They're standing in for the real thing. The real thing is the felt presence of immediate experience. This right here, guys. This is Terrence's most famous quote. I think I might have talked about this on stream before. This is the most important thing I want everyone on this stream to get out of this. And you don't need psychedelics to understand this concept, but it surely helps. The felt presence of immediate experience. We all need to be able to tap into that idea. So moving on. It's what giving back to us. It is putting you back in your place, in your time, with the knowledge now that there is a goal, there is a reason for hope, and there is something to save. The inner richness of the human being causes everything else to pale by comparison. I could not loot Madison Avenue to my heart's content and furnish my apartment, and it would be as garbage compared to the inner richness of the mind of one of these Mexican or Amazonian shaman. We have to find our way back to the authenticity of the body and back to the connection of the vegetable matrix of the planet. We are not apart from nature, but if we are cut off in our channels of communication to it, and I don't mean this in some airy-fairy way, I mean that if you are not embedded in the use of a plant hallucinogen, there is no way for you to get your instructions in the larger dance of what's happening, because the Gaian mind, the oversoul, or whatever you want to call it, this is how it controls the global megasystem, through the shedding and release of chemical messengers of all sorts that move all kinds of organisms around, including self-reflecting higher organisms. Well, I think you get the drift. So why don't we knock it off? You can bring out the knives. So yeah, I mean, he's anticipating a bunch of questions of skeptical viewers of his lecture. So I know it's a scary precipice, guys. If none of you have ever done psychedelics, it is definitely a scary thing to consider. But I honestly can tell you that there really isn't anything to be afraid of. If you do your research, get a book, head to your library, hop on the internet, listen to Terrence McKenna lectures on YouTube. There's plenty of evidence out here. These drugs are some of the safest drugs on the planet. You know. I don't want to advocate for starting for a low dose, because you don't. Terrence talks about this all the time. You don't want to start too low dose and not experience it. you don't want to go too high and freak out, but there is a perfect middle ground. As like with any other pharmacological compound, there is the ideal dose. And I just think it helps push the guy in mind out. It helps bring the guy in mind out that's inherently embedded in each one of us. And it helps us reconnect to the vegetable matrix that is the planet. I mean, there's a saying, I forget who said it, that the only reason we exist, that plants allowed us to exist, is so that we could carry their seeds around. Yeah, I think that's kind of true. Especially us mammalians, or us higher organisms, us self-reflecting higher organisms. I mean, look what we've been able to achieve with as far as creating synthetic vegetables or synthetic compounds. The explosion of technology and engineering and biology and chemistry and organic chemistry is fascinating, and I think that psychedelics are going to be a big player in the future for helping us reconnect to the planet and touch back in with our inner selves and help us, come back to the realization that we didn't come into the planet. We came out of it, and we need to take care of our home. So, yeah, that's it for tonight, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Again, thanks for watching. I love you all. Remember, keep living that green revolution, guys. Get out there, clean up your environment, spread the word, and more importantly than I think even this psychedelic argument is holding our corporate overlords accountable. So work on yourself on a personal level. Get out there into nature and equip yourself with knowledge. Read books. Plant trees. Pick up trash. And beyond that, write your congressman. Get involved politically. Sign petitions. Create volunteer movements where you guys can get together and hold these corporate overlords accountable that put profit over people and profit over environment. So yeah, guys, love you again. Peace out.